we can get started and then folks can join us as they come. But welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time to attend this presentation. My name is Juliette Juira, and I'm a program manager with Efficiency Vermont. So what I'll do is to give you a quick 10 minutes overview of the new limited time incentive program that Efficiency Vermont offers for integrated controls. And then I'll pass it on to Tom, who will go into details on the Daikin One Plus. Tom, do you want to just say a few words?
No, just thanks everybody for coming here today, meeting us and giving us the ability to talk about some of our products and how they will work with the Efficiency Vermont programs. So thank you. I'm Tom Campbell. I'm the account manager one of the account managers for Daikin here in New England, and I'm live from our training facility here in Woburn, Mass. So I'd rather have this, like I told Julie and Brent earlier, I would rather be doing this with everybody in this room right now, but maybe soon.
Great. So I'll get going and give a quick overview of the incentive program. We did a more detailed program overview and best practice webinar back in October, and the recording of that is on the program's webpage, on Efficiency Vermont's webpage. So I'm not going to repeat all that info, so I don't bore you, but if you were in that webinar, but I'll just do a quick recap. And I'll pause for a few minutes at the end of my part before we move on to Tom, if you have any questions, but feel free to add them in the chat as well. So with that, let's get started. First, a little background. For Efficiency Vermont and the Vermont's electric utilities, the goal of supporting integrated controls for ductless mini splits is really to enable the heat pumps to cover a greater portion of the heating load in the house, to be able to serve the whole home with the heat pump whenever possible and offset as much fossil fuel as possible. So in many cases, heat pumps that are installed in Vermont's homes are not being used for heating as much as they're really capable of. So integrated controls that would tie the heat pump to the central heating systems are one way to increase the number of hours that a customer would use their heat pumps for heating. So that's really the overall goal of us offering this program. And the program is offered in partnership with all the Vermont electric utilities, and so is available to all the Vermont customers regardless of their electric utility. So first I'll start with some definitions so that we know what we mean by integrated controls here. There are different names for that function. Some folks call it auxiliary heat, and I think that's what Daikin uses. But what we've called integrated controls for this program are devices that can control both the ductless mini split and central heating system from a single device. And that can switch between the two heating systems based on outdoor temperature or the temperature in the remote room away from the heat pump indoor heads if that's needed to align with what would be best practice guidelines. And I went into that in more details in that October webinar. One thing I wanted to note briefly is that this rebate program is currently a limited time offer for 1 year or 100 rebates, which will likely get extended because we're off to a slow start. But the hope is that with that limited time offer, we can get enough experience, enough customer feedback and contractor feedback to really roll this into a full-scale program that has a more streamlined approach around the rebate. So I just want to highlight this is a first step, and hopefully we can expand this and make this a more permanent program. And you may think, I get what's in it for the utilities, but what's in it for the homeowners to tie that heat pump with the central heating system? So we have Efficiency Vermont has a blog post that you may have seen, Who Knew 8 Ways Not to Use Your Heat Pump? And tip number 2 here is don't leave your existing heating system cranked up. So really, many Vermonters are not using their heat pump to its full potential for heating, and we can achieve more fossil fuel offsets by integrating that with the central heating system. So the customer benefits in a nutshell would be first, peace of mind. They can just set the set point on one single thermostat and not think about it anymore. The heat pump and central heating systems will take it from here. The customer can feel like they're doing what's best for the environment, using the heat pumps as much as possible and reducing fossil fuel consumption. They also enjoy all the benefits of an internet connected thermostat with remote access, vacation mode, and all that. They can feel like they're the leaders using cutting edge smart technology. One thing that we can't really guarantee at this point is that they will be saving money. That's in most cases, from the calculations I did, it's pretty much a wash. In some cases, especially with natural gas, they might actually be paying more by using their heat pump more. So really the main benefits we believe for the homeowners will be that peace of mind, ease of use, and feeling good about what's best for the environment. So with this quick intro on why we're doing this, I wanted to dive into more of the details of the incentive program. So the incentive that Efficiency Vermont is offering at this point is for up to $600 per home to cover the device cost and installation cost. It's not $600 per thermostat, but $600 per customer. And we ask that the customer pay at least $150 out of pockets, that they have a vested interest in the controls, that it's not a free device that they got, but that they're interested in that control. And the $150 is about the cost of a regular smart thermostat. So the incentive is currently for new ductless mini split installations, not for heat pumps that are already installed. And it's not available for ducted heat pumps at this point because that's already typically done for a ducted system. And we have a separate ducted heat pump incentive program. And this is for oil, propane, or natural gas central heating system. It's not available for resistance electric heat or central wood systems. And we have a switch over temperature calculation tool, and I went into that tool in the webinar in October, so feel free to go back and look at that webinar for an overview of the tool. But that tool is to help you decide on what would make a good balance point temperature for switching for turning on the central heat pump, for turning on the central heating system as a supplemental heat to the heat pump when it gets cold out, or if the heat pump can't keep up with covering the load. There's also a $200 trade-ally incentive. So you can get $200 for each rebate form that you or your customer submits to Efficiency Vermont. Either you or the customer can submit that rebate form, but if you want to be sure that we get it, it might be better for you to submit that form so you can be sure you get that $200 incentive. I have a link to the full eligibility requirements here and a link to the rebate form, and I'll put those links again at the end. So we want to make, because this is kind of new, having those integrated controls where the heat pump and the central heating system talk to each other. We want to make sure we see quality installations, the customers are satisfied, and we get a good start to this new market here. So we want to make sure that installers that are receiving the Efficiency Vermont incentive have followed trainings regarding the program, what we consider best practices for installation of the heat pumps, and really understand what are the risks and what makes a good installation for those integrated controls. So to verify those trainings were followed, we're doing this through the EEN. So if you're already an EEN ductless heat pump installer, you can follow the overview training that's linked on that webpage. If you haven't already, there's a really short quiz at the end that you can verify that you've attended it. I think it's 45 minutes total, the training, so it's pretty quick. And then you would follow manufacturer's product specific training for the product you installed. And this training you're in right now is one of them. So you'll have already done that piece. And then you would complete the EEN enrollment for integrated controls. So once you enroll in that EEN integrated controls group, what you would do to get to access the incentive is install the new heat pump with the integrated controls. You would look at what the the appropriate balance point might be using that Excel tool that I mentioned earlier. Program that integration in the thermostat, take a screenshot, then you complete that rebate form and send it to us. You'll need to get the electric account information from the customer and get their signature on the form. And then you'd send the rebate form to us with the screenshots. And that's what you would need to get the incentive either to the customer or to you. That's something you can choose on the rebate form. And you would get also your $200 trade ally incentive. So in terms of product eligibility, we've been focusing for this incentive program on integrated controls that can communicate a demand code both to ductless mini split heat pumps and to the central heating system, prioritizing one over the other based on the outdoor temperature or the remote room sensor when it's indicated. We're also focusing on integrated controls that are connected to the internet so that we can enable future demand response programs with the utilities. But we're aware that there are other options to do integration between the heat pump or the central heating system, but really the things we wanted to focus on at this point with the program was devices that are connected to the internet. So for full product qualification criteria, you can go on this webpage here. And I just wanted to flag the Daikin One Plus that we're going to be talking about in this presentation is definitely a product that qualifies for the program. So Tom will go into more details on that. And that's it for me. So again, the link that has most of the details on the program is here. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. So before I pass it on to Tom, I just wanted to see if there were any questions on the Efficiency Vermont program itself or the incentive program. Feel free to enter it in the chat, or Bryn, I'm not sure if there's an option to unmute and ask the question verbally.
Sure, so the chat box works, or raising your hand, and we can unmute folks if they would like to speak.
All right, I'll just wait a minute. Oh, thanks for putting that link in the chat. So yeah, there's a link in the chat to that program page, so feel free to go there for all the details. That's where the webinar is linked there as well, the program overview and best practice webinars there. So, and the links to the quizzes as well. You don't need to take a quiz for this presentation we're doing today if you're here live, because we have the attendance. So we don't need to confirm you here. We can see that in our attendance list. I don't see any questions, so I think I will pass it on to you, Tom. I'll stop sharing and then I will allow you to share your screen.
Does everybody see that?
Yep.
Excellent. All right. So again, I'm Tom Campbell. I'm an account manager for Daikin. I'm here in our training facility, which recently, over the last month, we just started holding in-person training classes here again. So reach out to one of our business partners, to their salespeople, and to get the full schedule of training. So there's going to be VRV training, ductless training, unitary training. It's all going to be done here. Come April, this whole place, right, the end of April, we're tearing it apart, we're rebuilding it, making it better. And so there should be about a month delay where we're not going to have training and then reopen, have a big reopening, do it bigger and better than we have in the past. So I'm here to talk about integrated control program, specifically using our Daikin One controller. Oops, I'm on. Right, so Daikin One. Daikin One is a controller we came out with maybe a little over a year ago. And what happened with our controllers before, we had, and we still do, have a wide gamut of different controllers. And one of the things that they wanted to do when we redesigned our controller, because we used to have a Wi-Fi stat at the NV stat. What's happened with the NV stat is we did lose some functionality. So one of the things we tried not to do is lose functionality and have the controller control this as well as any other controller we have, or maybe even better. And the reason why it's called the Daikin One is because we can take this and put it across our entire platform, right? So single zone, single one-to-ones, multi-zone, VRV, and unitary systems. So our entire line, the Daikin One can cover in one way or another. We wanted it Wi-Fi. We wanted it cloud connected. Having it cloud connected means that we can offer a lot of services now and then down the road, like monitoring and troubleshooting, and all these things are going to keep updating. With the cloud also, we were able to push all our updates down so that we can update and change and make the thermostat better without changing out the thermostat, right? It will keep continuing updating. I'll give you a good example of that. So I have a Daikin One in my house. When I first installed it, it didn't have the option to do auxiliary heat. Now it had the connections on it. So I have an attic system, I have a ranch. Right? I live in Nashua, New Hampshire. I have a ranch with hot water baseboard. I want to control that one zone of hot water baseboard as an integrated control. Well, I couldn't do that at the time. So I wired it accordingly. And then about 2-3 months later, an update came into the controller. I was then able to go into the controller, change a couple of things in the setup, and I was ready to roll. It was that easy. So as the controller gets better, like about a month ago, we changed the way you control temperature up and down and the look of it when it sits in the home room. So making it better and better and updating it as we go along. So some of the other things we wanted to do when we developed Daikin One was to give a lot of the features and benefits that a lot of people may be looking for, right? Geofencing is a big one right now. Being able to use Amazon Alexa or Google Assistant is important to some people, right? Error codes that make sense, that pop up on the screen and will actually give a description of what may be wrong. Remote access from the app is one of the biggest, right? We are able to take a phone app, right, and being able to mirror the controller. So almost everything I can do standing in front of the controller, I can do from the app. So it's just kind of cool, right? And again, we want to do that without losing any functionality of the control. So along through this presentation, I'm going to talk about S21 and P1P2. Right? That's in the chat. Oh, something. All right. So we're going to talk about S21 and P1P2, right? And they're two different types of what, like basically the way the controls wire. So S21 control is the best I can describe it is it will be, you'll use a Molex, it's a set wire with a Molex connector that'll plug into the S21 terminal on the board. And most of our wall mount units in our ductless and multis, you're going to see this in the floor mounts, the Amura. We do have our low static ducted, that's an S21 control, LV Aurora, so basically all our, most of our wall mount units. Sorry. I'm also going to talk about P1P2. So P1P2 is you have two wires running between the controller and the indoor unit. They should be 18 gauge stranded non-shielded cable between those two connections. So P1P2 is a 2-wire connection, not a Molex connector. You'll see that in our ceiling cassettes, mid-static ducted units in Sky Air line, our VRV line, and our VRV Life line. You're going to see the P1P2 controllers. When it's used in the unitary products, you won't need S21 P1P2, because what will happen is we have an adapter, right? I'm going to show that in a second, that is going to be able to help tie this into everything we'll be able to across our line. So the controller has two ways of controlling. There is a dial, so that this area right here spins, and you can turn the temperature up and down. You can press it, and it will bring it to the home screen. So that's one way to be able to change temperature and change the settings. The other thing you can do is you can come up to the controller and just touch screen. So the look is a little different. You used to have to go in and click this little round thing that mimics the dial, and click that, touch it, and you'll be able to temperature up and down. If you tap the screen now, it'll bring you to a screen that you can change temperatures up and down just by dragging your finger up and down to it. You can also come over here and touch the mode, right here, and be able to change your mode to heating, cooling, or auto. It's pretty simple and pretty easy to use. You'll have 4 types of messages, right? And they come in different colors, so you can kind of differentiate them. So when you see the red, that's going to be our status, right? What is the system doing right now? Alerts are going to be in yellow. In white, it is going to be just a reminder or a prompt, right? Just asking you what do you want to do next, especially in setup or something like that. And then kind of in a grayish look to it, you can click on that, and it'll give you kind of tips and suggestions on how to use the control to optimize it and use to your best that you need for your application. So a lot of the alerts that might pop up, the homeowner might be able to just dismiss. Obviously, there are some prompts that, the fan failure that has popped up on the screen there. Obviously, if the fan has actually failed, there's nothing we can reset. They're going to have to call and get it fixed. But there are some minor faults that will pop up, and you can just reset the system and move on and continue on. So in the box, right, you're going to get the Daikin One stat. You're going to get a backplate for it. You get an optional trim plate. What you also get is the translator. So the translator, and I'm going to show you how to wire it in a minute, right? This translator will be able to translate to that S21 or P1P2 connection. That comes in the box along with the S21 cable, because, like I said, that is just a Molex connector. When you use P1P2, you'll use non-shielded 18 gauge stranded wire between the translator and the indoor unit. Most of our wall mounts, like I said, most of our wall mounts have an S21 interface. There are some units like our 17 series, which do not have an S21 interface. With those, you're going to have to add a KRP board to the indoor unit to be able to tie directly into the S21 off of the translator. Right? But most of our indoor units that you're going to be installing will tie directly S21 clip into it. So installing thermostat, right? Common sense, right? We don't want it with a light shining on it. We don't want it close to the TV. Any sources of heat that might affect the operation of the thermostat. We want it on an interior wall, not an exterior wall. Simple things that, you guys have been installing thermostats for a long time probably, and it's the same rules going to apply to this controller. Again, about 5 feet off the wall. You may have some restrictions that might need to be lower. It should be leveled. We'll operate without being leveled, but you want it to look nice and straight. When you look at this, is the back plate. Right, here's your trim piece, and here is your back plate for it, which you'll mount. Right here in this little space that's a little darkened here, that's actually a level that's built into that back plate. So you can mount that back plate, level it, then when you snap the controller on, everything will be good to go. The question we always get is, where do I put that translator? You can put it above the unit. It has to be, you have a 6-foot cable for S21, so it would have to be 6 feet away from the indoor unit. It will mount in the pipe chase back here in a wall mount unit. A typical duct mounted unit, you're going to mount it. There's double-sided tape that you can mount the translator adapter to the ducted indoor unit, right? And again, we don't want you putting screws in the indoor unit. You know, we don't want to let any gas out of it or any smoke out of the board by drilling into the wrong spot on the air handler. It does come with an adhesive tape. You're going to put it on there. You're going to push it on. I'll apply pressure for about 20 seconds, and you should be good to go. So the Daikin One does have some restrictions as far as the amount of wire we can put on it. The maximum distance between the Daikin One and the translation adapter shouldn't be more than 125 feet, right? One thing you typically don't hear from us in the ductless world is that when you go from the thermostat to the translation adapter, you can use solid wires. You can use typical 18-gauge thermostat wire between the thermostat and the translator adapter. In fact, it works better. These connections are a little tight, and when using stranded wire, you really got to twist it tight, get it into the hole where you're going to tie it into. So so solid wire actually installs a little easier. When you have the whole thing wired and powered and ready to go, one thing you may want to check is that you have 0.6 volts DC between 1 and 2, right? Your data lines. And then that you have 24 volts DC between R and C. You just want to make sure that you have that there to make sure that you're wiring. You don't want to get the whole thing and ready to go and then find out that you need to run new wire because you're having the problem with the thermostat wire that may already be in the wall. If it is wired incorrectly, or if the power is reversed, there's a green light here that will start flashing when the power is wired incorrectly here. The translation adapter does need line voltage, so and it can be either 115 volts or 220 volt, depending on what you have. Typically, you're going to tie that right into the 220 volts at the air handler. And this is showing the S21 connection, right? We're tying in to the indoor unit here with our line voltage. We have our 4 wires running from the Daikin One plus the translation adapter. And then from the translation adapter, we have the Molex connector that will snap into the S21 connection on the board. Just another look at how the translation adapter and the whole thing is wired on an S21 application, right? You're going to, especially in an S21 application, you're going to want 1 thermostat per air handler. Even in P1P2, we recommend that. It can be done with 16 units, but that may get confusing within the install and making it a little more difficult for the homeowner to understand the control of it. There's this line voltage, P1P2, 2 wires tying into a unit from the translation adapter. And again, a maximum of 125 feet of 4-wire, 18 gauge going to the translation, from the thermostat to the translation adapter. So I guess this is the reason why we're here, right? To talk about how we will wire this in as an integrated control. The great thing about Daikin One is that we made this extremely easy to do. So on the sub base, there are auxiliary terminals, auxiliary 1, 1C, 2, 2C. All you're going to do is tie. So basically these contacts is just a set of dry contacts, right? No power to them. It's just a set of dry contacts that are going to open and close based on the parameters that you put into the controller. We're going to show that in a minute. So we're going to tie this directly to the auxiliary heat, whether it's the board or the boiler directly, a furnace, whatever it is. This could be a hydro coil, whatever your backup heat is going to be for your auxiliary heat. That's all we're going to do is use this set of dry contacts to be able to tie that together. A second, I'm clicking a little too quick here. So any questions at all on wiring? It is pretty simple to wire. There shouldn't be any surprises with it. It's pretty cut and dry. Okay, so the commissioning of the control. The other thing I really like about the Daikin One controller is how easy it is to go through the setup, because it's going to prompt you through. It's not going to be, our typical, like our VRC controller we've had for years. You need a certain code and try to figure out how to work through that. Well, this is going to be a lot easier. It's going to be in clear language on how to set this controller up. Right? Upon startup, it's going to walk you right through the process. It's going to ask you the language, if you want to use large font. It's going to also ask you what type of equipment. And this is important, right? When we talk about the S21 versus P1P2. So if it's a unitary piece of equipment, a standard furnace, or one of our Daikin Fit units, right? You're going to click unitary. If it is a unit, if it is typically a wall mount, something like that, it's going to be S21. If it's P1P2, you're gonna click on VRV, Sky Air, P1P2, just so the controller knows what signal it's gonna have to put out there. And easily click, begin setup. From there, it's gonna give you a 5-step process. And as you go through this process, there's gonna be check marks. They're gonna check off each one. Right? Communication, personalization, equipment setup, system optimization, and preferences. So you want to start with communication. And you want, the first step you want to do, and I know some installers want to just go ahead, get the equipment running, and move on. But it's important that we go in and set up the Wi-Fi first. And the reason why we want to set the Wi-Fi first is that if this controller has been sitting on the shelf a while, it doesn't have the latest software version to it. Once we tie this to the internet, it'll go out, look for its updates, and it'll automatically update to the latest version. So we want that to make sure that we have all the functionality, all the features and benefits that we could possibly get with this controller. You go to personalization, right? You're going to set your language. This is where you're going to set your date and time. You're going to put that in there to make sure that when they do the scheduling, that all works properly. You can name the controller, and you can go Fahrenheit, Celsius at this right here. When you go to this setup screen, it should tell you the model numbers of the indoor and outdoor unit, right? If it does not, you may have a communication error, right? You may have a communication problem and might have to go back, check wiring, whatever, but it should pick it up. The one thing you do have to do is you have to then enter the serial number of the unit. That is not picked up directly through the boards, but you will have to put that in there. Then hit next step. So again, indoor outdoor unit, add the serial numbers. So now we're going to come to this screen here for add equipment. This is where we're going to be able to set up that auxiliary terminal. And so we'll go in, click add equipment. We can pick what we want to do. So we want to pick auxiliary heat source, right? And you can pick at this point if the heat pump is a primary source of heat or is a secondary source of heat, right? It is possible, I've seen some applications where someone might have solar hot water that they want to heat with, that they want to use that as the primary source and then have the auxiliary, the heat pump as a second source. So, and then we can actually then set up another source as with the aux2 terminals to be able to set up another layer of heat sources of auxiliary heat. So we're going to go in here, then we're going to be able to go in and just, it's as easy as this, right? Heat pump lockout, set it up, auxiliary heat lockout, right? And the differential that you want to, if you want to set up the differential. It is absolutely that simple. Hit next, you go to the next screen, system optimization. So you're able to calibrate the stat at this time, but I would wait, and we recommend this, that you wait at least 30 minutes. Let the thermostat equalize. Let it kind of figure out some things about the house and figure out what it needs to do before we go on in calibrating the stat. But it can be calibrated through this screen. This is also where you're going to go later on, is to look at your error history, right? You'll be able to come in here to system optimization and look at error history. Then in preferences, you can set up now to optimize performances, put in dealer information, reminders can be set up, right? So we can put our set point deadband. So we can put our deadband how we want to be able to differentiate when we get in the auto mode. Do we want to go, do we want it to be a 3-degree difference between heating and cooling? We can set that up. We can set that up here. We can also set up overcooling to dehumidify, right? So we can base it on, say, we want a humidity of over, if it's over 60%, our overcooling to dehumidify, we can set this up from 0 to 3 degrees to overshoot the space to add a little more dehumidification just by overshooting the temperature, right? So that can be adjusted here. Of course, the dealer information will be put in here. If there is a problem, it will pop up on the screen to remind them who installed it. Hopefully, you're doing maintenance and they know who you are and have a good relationship with them and they know who to call. But you can put that information in here so that they can call you if there's any issues. So again, when I'm going through this controller, I would make sure that I go from top to bottom. You don't want to go back and try to figure out, okay, where did I leave off? What didn't I do, right? Try to go through it, go through 1 through 5. It doesn't take very long to run through the whole thing. Then you can hit complete setup, right? And you're good to go. So you hit the setup, you're done. Either you want to go back later and change something, or you're standing right there and say, oops, I forgot to do something, right? I want to change something. You'll go in up here. I believe it's over on the other side now, the waffle, this little waffle up here. You click on the waffle. You go into settings, and you can click configuration, dealer edit, and then hit continue. It's going to ask you for a 4-digit PIN to unlock the thermostat. If you don't know remember what this is, you come up here and hit this little icon up to the right-hand side, and it'll give you that code. You put it in here, and you're back to the thermostat setup screen. So if you wanted to go in and change any of the, the temperature changes from heating to cooling, right? If you decided that they want to optimize it and do it at a different temperature, optimize savings or whatever. Whatever you want to do, you can go back in later and set that up. All right, so when it's just running in normal mode, it's going to look like this, right? They can navigate the controller then by going up and just touching the screen. I should have an updated picture of this. It looks a little different. So now, let me go back. Now when you go up to the screen and touch the screen, right before you had to go in and click this little button, this little icon here, right? You have to touch it. Now, if you touch the screen, it will bring you directly to this screen here, and you can automatically go up and adjust temperature up and down. And like I said, you can go and touch this little icon, and that will be able to change your mode from heating, cooling, or auto. Scheduling is pretty easy. They go in and touch the calendar icon. You can go in and adjust the temperatures based on time frames. Then easily, if you want to just paste them today, you can go in, click the days that you want to, and you can copy and paste into these days. And then go and change another day, whatever you want to do. But it's that simple. This is your away screen you'll be able to go into, and this is where we can set up geofencing. So when we are away and that your phone senses that the app senses you're beyond the circle that you're going to put in for geofencing, this is where you'll be able to set your temperatures for the away mode. You'll be able to go into settings, and just like you could before, right? But when you go into configuration, right? I'll show that. One thing the homeowner is going to want to do is they're going to want to first download the app, make sure they have the app on the phone. Most installations that I've been on shadowing, the homeowner already has this ready to go. They know what it's going to do, and they're ready to go with it. It's already downloaded on their phone. But you want to go to one of the app stores, download the Daikin Home app, and this is the app where they're going to be able to set up. They're going to go and create an account. They're going to read the terms, sign off on it, set up their valid email and passwords. They will be prompted, right? They were prompted to an email to give them the code they're going to put in. Then they're going to add the thermostat location. The app is going to find that. It's going to, again, it's going to have on the controller, you're going to be able to put in the code, the same code, to link the two. And they're ready to go. Again, the app will pretty much mirror everything that the controller can do. So, you know, you can do this from anywhere in the world and control it almost like you're standing in front of it. So that's the installation. I'm going to go over a couple other little points, but that is a simple installation of the Daikin One stack. Like I said, very easy to use, very easy to install, and mostly very easy for the homeowner to use. Any questions before I move on? Hold on a second. There's a message here.
Hi, Tom. We have a question.
Yeah, how the homeowner can switch to emergency heat. That is a good question. I know that, you know, if automatically, if the controller, say if the outdoor unit does go down, it will automatically swap over to whatever source is working. To manually do that, I believe you'd actually have to go and change the setup. But it should, if there's actually an emergency heat that you needed to use, and like I said, the outdoor unit wouldn't run, or the indoor unit, you know, or the backup heat wouldn't run, it would automatically swap over to whatever source is working. I can get clarification on that. I haven't been asked that before. That's a good question. Thank you. I'll find out the answer to that, if there's another way to swap to emergency heat. Any other questions? All right. So like I said, that's the installation of the stack. I just want to go over where to find some of the data in our equipment, on our equipment, so we're able to make a good decision on the sizing, on our balance points, on where we stand as far as what the performance of the equipment does and where we do possibly need to swap over. So one of the reasons, and I always bring this up, is that one of the reasons we do sell heat pumps, right? And I do this primarily because I think, one, it should be brought to the forefront because it's really important. And it's good to just show us where in our data to be able to get some of this information, right? So I like talking about COP. It's my favorite. If you have a favorite kind of rating, it's my favorite one because it's simplified. I can walk up to almost any unit and with a simple formula and with the right tools and figure out what it is. And we can also put that to energy in, energy out, which is what it is, or dollars in, dollars out. So that's kind of why I like to explain heat pumps and savings of heat pumps to homeowners using COP, right? And so how can you find that data, right? Because we don't always give that, you know, we might give a COP in our submittals, but that's typically at 47 degrees, and that's not what most of the homeowners are looking for. That's not what you're looking for when you're trying to sell. So this is our 4MXL36, right? It's our Aurora unit. In the Daikin world, when we talk about Aurora, this is our cold climate heat pump. I hate to use that word hyperheat, but this is our cold climate heat pump, okay? I can look at this data and it will give me a chart, and this is in the engineering data, but if you reach out to your distributor salesperson, I've pulled a lot of the data out of the engineering guides, put them on a simple sheet so that you can have this at least for all our cold climate heat pumps. So you can kind of know where we stand. We can pull it out to for any of the standard heat pumps as well. But here's 4MXL36, our 4-port cold climate heat pump, our Aurora. And when I look at that magical 5 degrees we always talk about, right? At 5 degrees, right, at 68, and I have a little bit of a typo there, but let's use 37.6, so 37,600, right? So then I know what my temperature, that's my max temperature, right? My max BTU output at 5 degrees. Now, I don't give you a COP. You don't see a COP on here, but what I do have is my power input. So at this temperature, at basically these temperatures, at this output, this is what I'm putting into it to be able to get that output. So that gives my power in, power out, right? So everything is heat energy, right? We're basically an energy. And I can convert that power input, right? So there's 3,412 BTUs in a kilowatt. So I can multiply that and I can come up with a power input of 16,000 BTUs roughly. And at 5 degrees, that gives me a 2.35 COP, right? So that's kind of how we use these charts, right? There's a 3MXL24, same formula, right? And with a 2, this one has a 2.07, right? Basically a COP of 2. So for every dollar of energy I put in, I'm getting $2.07 back out. As compared to any of the fossil fuels, right? Which a max probably what 98 cents back out. So a big savings if we can continue to maintain the heat. So this is going to be based on obviously the load of the house. Same formula at 23 degrees, right? If we were looking to probably have this heat pump shut off at, you know, this is our balance point 23 degrees, we could see our COP above that. And then we could see, you know, where we go below. Why it's important to bring this forth is like, actually here's a very good point too, about 5MXS48, which is not a cold climate heat pump, but if you look at it, it's a 5-port non-branch box unit. And even at 23 degrees, okay, even at 5 degrees, we have about 3 tons of heat in this unit. So if the load matches it, if the load of the house matches that, and that's what we're looking for at 5 degrees, then we're good. We could probably still use this 5-port, even though it's not a cold climate heat pump. And at 23 degrees, there's a 2.78 COP. And at 5 degrees, 2.24. It's important, right? Everybody thinks, right? And I'm sure you go through this a lot with your customers. Everybody thinks it's a lot colder than it is because they always remember the worst case scenario, right? So when we look at Burlington, Vermont, basically 4,682 hours below 50 degrees, right? And the design temperature for Burlington, Vermont is -11, right? It's pretty low. But if we look over the actual data, right? That -11, we're only about 516 hours. Right? And if we use, let's say, a crossover point, if we had a balance point of 20 degrees Fahrenheit, we're able to use the heat pump 71% of the time. So 71% of the time, it's above that crossover point of 20 degrees. If that's a crossover point, obviously it may be different based on utility rates and a whole other factors. And 53% of the time, hours are above freezing. So again, it's not as cold as we think. Now, it's in Burlington. I didn't have anything for the south in Vermont, but I do have Albany, which is nearby, and those numbers are even better, right? It's got a design temperature -7, right? But 84% of the time we've used that 20 degree crossover temp. Then, you know, 84% of the time we're using heat pump and saving, right? So if that we had a 2 say a COP of 2 at that temperature, right? For $1 in, $2 out, as compared to swapping over to our fossil fuel at 98 cents back out. same questions. Oh, here we go. I was frozen there for a second. Sorry about that. All right. So a couple of ways we could also look at setting up the equipment, making sure that we have the right line sizes, especially on a multi-system, to make sure we have the correct matchup. So we have matchup sheets. There's a Daikin cheat sheet. Again, reach out to your distributor salesperson. They were glad to set you up with the updated RAQA cheat sheet. Also available on Daikin City. And if you're going to be doing any Daikin products or even servicing them, getting a Daikin City account is extremely important. All the information that I showed you as far as that data, plus installation instructions, submittal pack, everything is on there. And software like Split Express, you can go in there and we can actually design a system through Split Express. It'll give you those output temperatures at the certain, you put in your design temp and it'll give you the system's output temperature that will spit it right out to the software. One of the other apps that you might want to get is the Tech Hub app, which will have, again, a lot of installation instructions in it. If you're doing any servicing, it's going to have all the codes in it. A lot of times I'll get a call from somebody and ask me what the code is. Now, I don't service every day. I don't have it memorized. I simply go to the Tech Hub app. I punch it in there, and that's what I give them that information that I've just found on something that they actually could have looked at, and saved itself a phone call. So it's a good idea. So within Vermont, we have you could have 3 different people you can go to for our products. Abco is servicing in the area. In fact, Esther is on this call right now. Give Esther a call. She'll be glad to help you out. Abco is servicing the area. They're delivering on a regular basis to Vermont at this time. United Refrigeration in Rutland is a stocking location in Rutland. Give Todd a call. And soon in the Burlington, it's set for sometime in February, so sometime next month, Johnstone will be opening in the Burlington area. So any questions on the data or anything we've talked about so far?
Hi, Tom. Did you cover the crossover point question?
No, maybe I didn't see it. Sorry.
If I can jump in.
Oh, the crossover. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if I can jump in quickly on the crossover question, because we have Efficiency Vermont has a tool on the website. So if I can, if you don't mind, I can share my screen just for a minute to show what is
absolutely.
available.
Yeah, yep.
All right, so let me do that. So if you can see my screen now, this is a tool that is available on the Efficiency Vermont website under the heat pump balance point tool. And the link is in that webpage that I shared earlier that's in the chat. But in the tool, you can enter different values for the square footage of the house, how it's heated, and then different fuel costs for different types of fuel, natural gas, 100% renewable natural gas, propane, oil, or electricity. And based on what you enter, and you can change the heat pump here, different brands. So it looks up the COP of that heat pump at different temperature and then graphs 2 different ways to look at it. One is to have a balance point, which I believe Daikin refers to as the crossover temperature. But if we call it the balance point, here's the what temperature would the heat pump still be able to cover 100% of the load? And that will depend on the efficiency of the building envelope. If it's a leaky building envelope, a leaky, not much insulation, then you won't be able to go quite as low for the temperatures, but that will give you an idea of what might be a good crossover temperature for supplementing with the central heating system. Another way to look at it is that graph at the bottom here is looking at the economic balance point. So if you change here, if you change the cost of oil, so if you change this to $5 a gallon, that will change what the temperature is where what the homeowner will start saving money. So again, take a look at the tool on the webpage and play around with it and see if that's helpful for you in helping determine what's a good crossover temperature. So I hope that's helpful, and Tom, go for it if you want to add more. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that tool here, because I think it could be a useful tool to get started on understanding what's a good temperature. And again,
yeah, absolutely, especially because a lot of people looking at, like up in the Burlington area, they may be on natural gas, and it's a whole different balance point than if you would be with propane or oil.
Right. So I'll stop sharing and pass it back to you. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that resource on our webpage.
And actually, let me go back to that screen since time. Yeah, I mean, that crossover point too, it could be here, but that's all I'm saying is just crossing over from one fuel to the other. If you look at, oops, the charts, go back. Especially like the Form XL, it's really based on that load. Do I want, so this is that crossover point. You know, with the Form XL, is my load above 4 tons, right? And I'm dropping off at this point where I might not be able to make any. Say my load is 4 tons, and then I can swap over to the fossil fuel, whatever, at that point here. Or if it is lower, I can, you know, if it is 3 tons, I could be at 5 degrees. I could be at, you know, 2 tons. Whatever they need, that swap over point is going to be based on the building load, right? When you do your load calc, and it's going to determine where you're going to be swapping these over, and what fuel you're using, where you're going to be really stable. Hopefully that makes sense.
Hi, Tom. We do have a couple more questions.
Yeah, so Bill, you crossover shut off the heat pump and energize auxiliary 100%. When we set it up, we can set it up that way. We can set it up that it will run simultaneously, but the purpose of the integrated control is to be able to turn one off and turn the other one on, right? So when we do set it up as an integrated control, you are going to set that temperature of lockouts. You can overlap those. If you saw that screen, let me go back.
So I'm going to bring Bill over so he can unmute himself and talk if you would like.
Thank you.
So let me go.
We can hear you, Bill.
Thank you very much.
So we can set these up to be able to have this, if you wanted to do an overlap on these controls, right? We can do that, right? Typically, we might not do that with a furnace and heat pump, right? A coil on top of a furnace. We'd want to swap that over. But with their separate sources, say it's a wall mount and using forced hot water baseboard, then yeah, you could optimize the heat pump and add it as a supplemental and let them kind of overlap each other. So that's possible. It depends on how, when you come into this screen and how you set it up. Does that answer the question, Bill?
I'd like to see how it's done in the installation manual. I wonder if you could email me a copy.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, Bill, and we have your email address, so we'll share that with Tom.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. I'd be glad to do that.
My reasoning is over the decades, balance point is when the heat pump is unable to maintain the load, and auxiliary would supplement it. Cutoff point is when it is decided that it's no longer economically correct or even comfort correct to operate the heat pump, and the heat pump is off and auxiliary becomes 100%.
Right.
So those 2 points you would make clear to the customer as the conditions where each would be implemented. This crossover I don't get. I'll have to work on understanding that correctly.
So if you would use a hard, basically what I'm talking about the crossover, really all I'm showing is that if we were to have a hard shut off at a certain temperature, right? All I'm showing in that slide is how we could, people think it's a lot colder than it really is, and we show that data. We can show that, we're going to be running that heat pump and using everything, the good stuff that we can do with heat pumps and the savings with heat pumps longer than most people think. That's kind of where I was getting at with the slide. Right? It's kind of, and I think a lot of us in the industry understand that, but I don't think homeowners necessarily do, because they always think it's, they all walk to school in a foot of snow uphill both ways, right? They think of the worst case scenario, and that's what they kind of think of when they're going it. So that's kind of all I was really getting at when I was showing that crossover point. I do understand there is economic balance point, thermal balance points, of which you use is going to be up to the application. So yeah, I can send you the installation instructions if you want to take a look and get a feel for how this control works. Are you doing business right now with any of the distributors, Bill?
I'm interested because of, I'd like to return to your product now that you've changed your distribution.
Yep.
And having Esther on your team is a big plus. I can't wait to see what she's got.
I absolutely agree with you, by the way, that Esther's a rock star. She's going to do great up there. Yeah, I can actually, and I can, any of this data, if you want this presentation, we can get that over to you. I can actually even have Esther bring you whatever you need. I can, I support Esther. She's in my account group. So yeah, I can, whatever she needs, you can ask me, I'll get it over to you. All right, I see another message here. All right. Back up here. All right, we're almost done. I'm just going to go quick. Typically, if you were sitting here, I'd be handing you out an assessment. Obviously, I can't do that. Again, I wish I was in front of people. I like doing presentations, seeing people's faces. And these Zoom calls are sometimes tough. So I'm going to run through and we'll give you the answers. When commissioning the Daikin One through a full setup, what steps need to be reviewed before completing setup? That was pretty easy, right? All the steps. If the unit does not have an S21 interface, you must use an interface adapter, and that is true. The measurement between data line 1 and 2 should read. And again, this is something I recommend to do when you get on a wall, get it wired, to make sure that your wiring is right before you go too far down the road. And the answer is 0.6 volts DC. That one's an easy one, right? 5 feet off the wall. Yes, it can be affected by radiant heat. How many seconds should the translation adapter, right, double-sided tape, is 20 seconds. Yep, the power LED will flash green if wires are reversed. You shouldn't use screws on a indoor unit. This is really important. Which setup tab allows you to add equipment? Because if we already have the system set up and then we added later on the backup heat, we can go into the equipment setup. Should wait 30 minutes for calibrating the thermostat. The thermal off deadband is a fixed value of 9 degrees from any split and outdoor units. Alerts have priority over all messages. You want to look for the check boxes as you're going through all the setup, right? There are all those screens. They're going to check off as you go along. Right? We don't want to exceed 125 feet between the Daikin One and our translator adapter. Right, so white is non-critical and yellow is critical as far as error history logs. They need a mobile device and Wi-Fi connection. And the version of the thermostat is not displayed on the welcome screen. You have to go into the settings and find the version of the thermostat. Any further questions that might have come up? If not, that's all I have for today. And again, thank everybody for taking time on a very cold day today. I'm sure everybody's busy. Snow on the way, so it should be make it even a little more difficult. But I'm glad everybody was able to attend today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. This was great. And while people think about questions, I just wanted to once again highlight that if you're interested in more discussion about the balance point and crossover temperature or cutoff temperature, in the webinar that was in October, I went into a little more details about definitions there and Efficiency Vermont's point of view on the balance point, and also more of an overview of the balance point tool that I shared and how to use it. So if you're interested in knowing more about that, make sure to go on that link that was in the chat and watch that short webinar. And with that, are there any more questions? Feel free. Yeah, feel free to email either of us directly if you have any questions. And yeah, thank you so much. There is a question about EEN credits. Brynn, I don't know if you want to jump on and answer that one directly.
Yeah, so we have EEN credits. I'm not sure about EIN credits, but for those that are members of the Efficiency Network, we will add those. It'll be 2 credits for attending today. So we will go ahead and add those for all of the attendees. I think some folks might have registered or have multiple folks joining under one name. So if you do, just email me at EEN@efficiencyvermont, all spelled out, .com, so we can give everybody credit.
Great, thank you. Well, I don't see any more questions. So thanks everyone. It's good talking to you, and hopefully we can meet in person sometime soon.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Take care.